Recently, I read a blog called Women for Hire, and in the blog was an article about age discrimination. And what it said was that many people age 50 or older enter the job search with a defeated attitude and a bundle of resentment because of the potential for age discrimination. And listen, we know age discrimination is not fair, but to go into a job interview with a negative attitude and resentment, that's not going to help anyone. So what I want to do in this episode of Over 50 TV is tell you how to overcome age discrimination in your job search, and that is up next. Hi, welcome back to Over 50 TV, where we provide business and career advice to people over 50. My name is Lou Reyes. I'm your host. And today we're talking about age discrimination. And at the top of the program, I refer to a blog I read that said many people over 50 are approaching the job search with a negative attitude and a bundle of resentment because of the possibility for age discrimination. And listen, we know age discrimination is not fair, but it is a reality. So what I want to do in this program is I want to give you 4 steps that you can take to overcome age discrimination. And I'm going to start with step number 1, which I call understanding the marketplace. And understanding the marketplace, I've broken it down into 3 parts. Part 1 is to thoroughly understand the skills that are required for the position. And what that means is doing some research. You may have been in the position in that same job, in the same job description that you're applying for, but understand the skills thoroughly for that company that you're applying for. Also understand what skills are going to be required down the road. I spoke to a nurse recently, and she has a very good position, but what she did is she said to me, she said, Lou, I know that down in a month, in a year, in a couple of years, the skill requirements are going to change. So I have got to get some more education. And she understood, this is what's required today, but I know that down the road, there are going to be other requirements. And if I don't change now, if I don't acquire those new skills, I may not have a job later. So understanding the skills required is very important, but don't shortchange yourself. Understand what's required later too. Now, the other thing I want you to know is who is the competition. So this is the second part of step 1. Know who you're competing with. You are selling yourself. You are a product. So you want to know who you're competing with. Now, you're going to be competing with other baby boomers, the 73 million or so people out there who are in your age range. And some of them have the same skills, and some of them are going to be applying for a position like yours, or maybe even the same position. But really, you're competing with millennials. You're competing with the 20, 30-something-year-olds, 72 million strong population who has been entering the workforce in the last 10 years or so. So you're competing with them. In general, many of them are technologically savvy, and in general, employers view them as people who are willing to accept less money. For me, when I'm applying for a position or I'm talking to someone who's applying for a position, I want them to understand who they're competing with. No surprises. So that's an important part of step number 1. In step number 3, part number 3 of step number 1. I don't want to confuse you. But part number 3 is also important. It's know what the average salary is. Know what you can expect to be paid. To me, when I'm sitting in front of an employer in my past, and I talk to people that are sitting in front of an employer, and a potential employer says, what do you expect to be paid? What do you expect your compensation to be? You have a point of reference if you've done the research. You know what the average is. You know what you can expect. You can say to yourself, I'm worth more than the average, and possibly you are. There's a good possibility you are, but at least know the average so that when you're talking to an employer and you're remembering that you're a salesperson, you need to sell yourself, you can say, I know what the average is, but... if you want more money, know what the average is, have a point of reference, just don't pull something out of thin air. So these are 3 parts of step number 1. And step number 1, understanding the marketplace, is basically the research portion of my recommendation here. So that is step number 1. Step 2, assess your skills. And this is an area I think that sometimes we have a hard time with. I know if I'm writing down a list of what I've done, what my skill set is, I'm looking at my skill set and I'm thinking, hey, this is relevant. This isn't relevant, or I'm deficient in a particular area. When you're applying for a position, you want to know how your skill set matches up with what's required. If there is an area that's deficient, fix it before you go into the interview. Don't go into the interview and say, well, I don't know that, but I can learn it. Don't go in there and say, well, I can learn it real fast. I'm a quick learner. No. When you're applying for a position, and we're talking here about avoiding, age discrimination, and the steps you need to take. So when you go in, be prepared. Know exactly what skills are required, and don't say to that person who's interviewing you, well, I'm a quick learner, or I can learn it. I've heard that so many times. I've interviewed hundreds of people over the years and in my different companies, and I have interviewed people who have said to me, well, you know what, I don't know that skill, but I'd be more than willing to learn it. Just give me time. I'm a quick learner. Well, you know what, as an employer, I don't have the time. As an employer, many times I don't want to make the investment in your learning. What I want is somebody who's coming into that job, who has the skills, they match up with the position that I need, and they can hit the ground running. So it's important for you to know what the skills are that you have, know the skills that are required, match them up and see where you're deficient, but don't go into a position without doing this first. It's very, very important. Step 3, rehearse. And to me, this is another one of those steps. I know I've said before that some of these other steps, step 1 and 2, they're important. Step 3 is very, very important. Rehearsing before you go into an interview. And let me tell you a story. I remember when I was a bit younger, I was applying for a job at a very large company. And I went into the interview and I bombed. I flubbed the interview. I was horrible. They're asking me questions that I thought I should have had the answers for. I thought I was glib, experienced enough. I thought I could answer those questions and have no problem whatsoever. But I didn't answer the questions properly. I didn't get the position. And I remember going home and I remember being dejected, and I remember going to my wife and she asked me, well, how did it go? Or did you get the job? And I was like, no, I didn't get the position. And I looked at her and I thought, you know what, this is never going to happen again. So what I did is I wrote down the questions that I was asked, and I wrote down the answers to those questions, and I memorized those questions. And I remember laying on the floor in my living room. My wife was on the sofa, and she'd ask me the question, and I answered them one after the other, just like a machine. I answered the questions perfectly. So the next time I went into an interview, I could look at that person asking me the question, and I knew the answer, because chances are they're asking the same questions from one company to the next. They're asking you the same questions, and if you rehearse those questions properly, you could come across very professional, you can come across very calm. I recommend rehearsing. It's so important, especially if you're looking to get a position. You want to be comfortable in the position. You don't want to sit there and trying to guess what the answer should be. You just want to go in there, answer honestly, but answer in a rehearse it so that you answer it smoothly. That is step 3. Step 4. Now this step is something that's going to happen automatically. It's called attitude change. If you do step 1, if you do step 2, and then you do step 3, you're going to notice a subtle change. And maybe that subtle change is going to be really like a storm that's just going to hit you. And you're going to know that when you go in for a job interview, that you are qualified, that you bring value, and you're going to know that they should be hiring you. And if they don't hire you, that's not your fault. If they don't hire you, it's nothing that you've done, because you're prepared. You've studied the marketplace. You know how your skills match up. So it's like any salesperson that's going out there. When I was starting out in business and I had a chain of business publications, I remember going door to door, literally going door to door, knocking on doors. And I would occasionally get a no, or I should say more often than not, I got a no. But what I did is I'd go in, I'd get a no. Sometimes I'd walk out of the meeting and my shoulders would be slumped. I'd feel kind of bummed out, maybe a little depressed. But that lasted a second. And it lasted a second because I knew I had a superior product. And I knew that if they didn't advertise with me, it was nothing that I did. I knew they weren't going to find somebody else, some other product like mine. And know that this employer, if they don't hire you, they're not going to find somebody else like you, somebody else with your skill set, your experience, and your knowledge, and your attitude. But like I said, your attitude, your whole approach to the job search is going to change. If you do the steps, if you go in prepared, you're going to know your value. That's so important. So follow those steps. Follow the steps. Understand the marketplace. That is very, very important. Understand your skill set and be realistic. Sometimes we fool ourselves, but don't fool yourself. Understand your skill set, and if you're deficient in an area, fix it. That will help you without question. And then of course the thing that I always see is practice. Practice what you're doing. Whether it's you're practicing the answers, or whether you're sitting there and you're writing it down, and then you're asking, in your mind you're playing it back and back and back. But practice with somebody or by yourself, but do it. And then of course, like I said, your attitude will change. But those 4 steps, if you take them, that's going to help you to overcome age discrimination when you're looking for a position. This is Lou Reyes with Over 50 TV, where we provide business and career advice to people over 50, and I look forward to meeting you and talking to you again soon. Thank you.